You're here.
I never left.
I knew you wouldn't.
The heart monitor went silent for 2 terrible seconds. A nurse dropped a tray, and when Elena Hart opened her eyes after 7 years in a coma, she didn't reach for the mother sobbing at her bedside or the sister clutching her hand for the cameras. She tore free from the blankets, found the man frozen in the doorway, and wrapped trembling fingers around his wrist. "Don't let Vivian take Mia." The whole room stopped breathing. If stories like this hit you right in the chest, stay with me till the end, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from. Because this one doesn't just break your heart, it makes you question how long love can survive when everyone around it is trying to kill it. "Elena?" the doctor whispered, stunned. Her lips were dry. Her eyes were wild and unfocused, darting from face to face until they landed on the man in the doorway again. "Noah," she croaked, and that one word nearly destroyed him. For 7 years, Noah Reed had spoken to a woman who never answered. He had read books to her when the lights were low. He had sat beside her while machines breathed for her. He had apologized to her in whispers no one else heard. And now she was awake. Awake, looking straight at him like not a single day had passed. But the strangest part wasn't that she had said his name. It was the way Vivian went white. "Elena, sweetheart, you're confused," Vivian said quickly, stepping closer, her voice soft and polished in that practiced way people use when they want to sound loving in front of strangers. "It's me, Vivian. You're safe." Elena flinched so hard the heart monitor jumped again. "No," she rasped. "Mia, where's my baby?" Noah took one step forward before 2 hospital security guards appeared in the doorway like they had been waiting for him to try exactly that. He stopped instantly. That was the cruel joke of his life now. His wife had just woken up after 7 years, and even then, he still needed permission to touch her. "Elena," the doctor said gently, "you've been unconscious for a long time. Please try to stay calm." "How long?" she asked. No one answered fast enough. Elena looked at Noah. He looked like a man who had aged 20 years in 7. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders wider but heavier, wedding ring still on his finger, shirt wrinkled from a night spent in waiting room chairs instead of beds. "Elena," he said, and his voice cracked on the second syllable. "It's been 7 years." She stared at him. Then she looked down at her own hands. The scream that came out of her didn't sound human. Doctors rushed in. Nurses pressed buttons. Her mother collapsed into a chair. Vivian started crying, loudly, beautifully, the kind of crying that made people turn toward her. But Elena didn't look at any of them. She kept reaching toward Noah. He didn't realize he was crying until one of the tears hit the back of her hand. That should have been the miracle. That should have been the end of everything bad. It wasn't even the beginning. Because less than an hour later, after they stabilized Elena and limited visitors, Vivian was in the hallway speaking to a lawyer before sunrise. And the first thing she said was, "We need emergency conservatorship before he gets inside her head." Noah heard every word. He was standing around the corner with a paper cup of coffee he had forgotten to drink. For a moment, he just stared at the floor. Then he laughed. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes when pain gets too old, it stops sounding like pain. Nurse Rosa was the one who found him like that. Rosa had worked the late neurology wing for 6 of Elena's 7 sleeping years. She had seen Noah arrive after double shifts with grease still on his knuckles and sit by Elena's bed whispering stories about the outside world. She had seen him on anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. She had also seen him escorted out when the Hart family wanted private time. "Don't let them bait you," Rosa said quietly. Noah rubbed a hand over his face. She woke up, and the first thing she did was warn me about Vivian. Rosa nodded once. Then whatever she remembers is dangerous. By noon, half the city knew Elena Hart had awakened. The internet called it a miracle. News vans lined up outside the hospital. The Hart family was rich enough to make a medical event look like a royal announcement. Elena's late father had built a construction empire, donated entire hospital wings, and spent a lifetime teaching the city to applaud the Harts for every act of public generosity. So by lunchtime, the headlines weren't just about Elena waking up. They were about the beautiful tragedy of a devoted family who had waited 7 years for their daughter, sister, and mother to return. Noah wasn't mentioned. He rarely was. In most versions of the story, he was either a mistake Elena made in her 20s or the angry husband she had been fighting with before her crash. That last part, unfortunately, was true. 7 years earlier, on a rain-slicked night in October, Elena had stormed out of their house after a brutal argument. Mia had been asleep upstairs. Noah had followed Elena to the front door, furious, exhausted, and stupid enough to say the sentence that had poisoned every night of his life since. "If you leave like this, don't ask me to fix it." She had turned, eyes bright with tears and rage. "I'm not asking you to fix anything, Noah. I'm asking you to believe me." Then she got in her car. 10 minutes later, she went through the guardrail on Mercer Bridge. When police pulled the wreck from the river, they called it weather and speed. When Elena didn't wake up, the Harts called it Noah. He had argued with her. Neighbors had heard yelling. He had a temper. He came from the wrong side of the city. He worked with cars, so of course there were ugly whispers that he could have tampered with one. No charges were ever filed. But charges aren't always necessary. Sometimes suspicion is enough to ruin a man's life if the right people keep feeding it. By the time Elena had been in a coma for 6 months, Noah had drained his savings on lawyers trying to protect his rights to see both his wife and his daughter. By the end of the first year, he had lost temporary custody of Mia to Elena's parents on the grounds of instability and ongoing family conflict. By the 3rd year, Elena's father was dead, Elena's mother was medicated and absent, and Vivian Hart had stepped into the role she had always seemed born for: elegant, controlled, sympathetic, impossible to challenge in public. And now, Elena was awake, which should have terrified Vivian for one simple reason: sleeping people can't testify. When Noah was finally allowed into Elena's room that evening, it wasn't because Vivian relented. It was because Elena refused medication and ripped out an IV trying to climb out of bed, repeating his name until the doctor said letting him in was medically necessary. Noah walked in like he was entering a church after years of exile. For a second, neither of them spoke. Elena looked smaller than he remembered, too pale, hair thinner, bones sharp beneath the blanket. But her eyes were the same, dark, alive, too full of feeling to hide anything for long. "You kept the ring," she said. Noah glanced at his hand. "Yeah." Why? He could have told her because he was a fool, because signing papers didn't mean much when your wife was still warm and breathing, because loving her had become less of a choice than a wound. Instead, he said, "Couldn't get it off." For the first time, her mouth twitched. It almost broke him more than the crying had. Then the smile vanished. "Mia," she said again. "I want Mia." Noah pulled a chair closer. "Elena, Mia isn't a baby anymore." Her face drained. "How old?" "She's 8. Elena turned her head away. Noah saw her throat move once, twice. When she spoke again, the words came out tiny and strangled. "Did she think I left her?" Noah couldn't answer. That told her enough. A tear slipped down the side of her face into her hair. Then, After a long silence, she whispered, "Did you?" He frowned. "Did I what?" "Leave her." His eyes closed. There it was, the poison, already in the room. "No," he said, "never by choice." Elena stared at him, trying to read years he hadn't lived yet in her own mind. "Then why were you in the doorway?" she asked. "Why weren't you next to me?" He gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "Because I'm usually in the doorway." She didn't understand. Not yet. But over the next 48 hours, she started to. Her mother visited with trembling hands and kisses on Elena's forehead and stories that never quite landed. Vivian visited with flowers, fruit arrangements, and statements disguised as comfort. "You've been through so much. Mia is sensitive. We have to ease her in. Try not to stress yourself with old conflicts. Some people may use your confusion right now." Every time Vivian spoke, Elena's pulse rose. Every single time. The doctors noticed it before Elena did. So did Noah. On the third night, when Vivian finally left and Rosa checked the hallway to make sure they were alone, Elena said the first thing that truly changed the air between them. "I heard you," she told Noah. He blinked. "What?" "When I was asleep." Her voice was rough but steadier. "Not everything, not all the time, just pieces, like swimming toward a sound and losing it. But sometimes I heard you. Rain on your jacket, pages turning, you saying sorry when you thought no one could hear." Noah sat completely still. "I thought I was dreaming," she said. "But when I saw you in the doorway, I knew your face. I knew your hand." That was it. That was the moment he looked away, pressed his fist to his mouth, and finally let himself break in front of her. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just one shattered breath after another, while she watched the cost of 7 years settle onto a man who had carried it alone. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. His head snapped up. "No, don't. Don't you dare apologize for waking up." "Noah." "You don't owe me that." "I owe you more than that." Her eyes filled. "I just don't remember why." That was the new question now. Not just what happened to Elena, but what happened before the crash that made a waking woman, still half lost in time, fear her own sister more than the missing years. The answer didn't come all at once. It came like glass under skin, sharp little pieces. A smell, wet leather. A red traffic light bleeding through rain. Vivian's voice on the phone saying, "She's becoming a problem." The memory hit Elena so hard the next morning, she vomited. The doctor called it post-traumatic stress surfacing through neurological fog. Vivian called it manipulation. "Misinformation can create false memories," she said, standing at the foot of Elena's bed with arms folded gracefully. "Especially when certain people are feeding them to you." Elena looked at her. For a second, the room felt colder. "What certain people?" Vivian smiled. "You know exactly who I mean." Noah wasn't even there. That was the genius of Vivian. She didn't need him present to make him look guilty. That afternoon, Mia came to the hospital. No one prepared Elena for how brutal that would be. They wheeled her hair, they adjusted Elena's pillows, they dimmed the lights, they told her to stay calm. Then the door opened, and an 8-year-old girl walked in holding Vivian's hand. Elena forgot how to breathe. Mia had Noah's eyes. That was the first thing, not Elena's, Noah's. Dark, serious eyes, too old for her face. Her hair was tied in 2 uneven braids. She wore a yellow cardigan with one sleeve stretched longer than the other, like she chewed it when she was nervous. Elena started crying before Mia even reached the bed. "Mia," she whispered. Mia stopped 2 steps away. She looked at Elena the way children look at portraits in old houses, fascinated, unsure, a little afraid. "Hi," Mia said softly. Elena reached out both hands. Mia didn't take them. That hesitation sliced cleaner than any scream could have. "Baby, it's okay," Elena said, voice shaking. "It's Mommy." Mia looked up at Vivian first, only for a second, but Elena saw it. That single glance told her who had been teaching her daughter where safety lived. "Can I ask something?" Mia said. Elena nodded too fast. "Were you dreaming all this time?" Elena swallowed. "I don't know." Mia considered that seriously. Then she asked the question that turned Noah to stone in the corner. "Did you know my dad wasn't nice before you went to sleep?" The room went still. Vivian drew in a quiet breath, as if embarrassed by children saying inconvenient things. "Mia, honey, maybe not now." "No," Elena said sharply. Everyone looked at her. Her voice had come out stronger than it had in days. She kept her eyes on her daughter. "Why would you ask me that?" Mia's fingers tightened around the hem of her cardigan. "Because Aunt Vivian said you were crying the night you got hurt. Because you were scared. Because he used to shout." Noah didn't move, didn't defend himself, didn't say her aunt was lying. That silence scared Elena more than the accusation. "Come here," she said gently. Mia hesitated. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Elena touched her fingertips to the child's wrist, like someone checking if a miracle was still warm. "I need you to listen to me," Elena said. "Your dad did shout sometimes. I shouted too. Grown-ups can be messy and still love each other. But he loved you before you were born. He loved you every day after. And if anyone tells you he stopped, they're wrong." Mia's eyes flicked toward Noah. He looked like he might collapse under the weight of not being allowed to earn that moment himself. "Then why don't I live with him?" Mia asked. Nobody answered. Not Vivian, not Elena, not Noah. Because some questions are too ugly to place in a child's hands. That night, after Mia left confused and quieter than before, Rosa brought Elena a cardboard box. It was worn at the corners and sealed with cheap tape. "What is this?" Elena asked. Rosa set it in her lap. 7 years of a man refusing to disappear. Inside were birthday cards, anniversary notes, drawings Mia had made as a toddler, and half-finished letters from a girl old enough to spell but not old enough to understand why no one mailed them. There were receipts for flowers, photographs of Noah beside Elena's bed when her hair had been shaved after surgery, and dozens of tiny voice recorders labeled by date. Elena picked one up with trembling hands. Rosa pressed play. Static. Then Noah's voice, younger, rougher, exhausted. "Hey, Lena, it's Mia's 3rd birthday. She blew out the candles too hard and spit on the cake." A weak laugh. "You would have laughed. Your mom wouldn't let me stay for presents, said it would upset the family. I left the rabbit toy by the front gate. If it goes missing, I hope Mia got it first." The recording clicked. Elena pressed another. "Mia started preschool today. She cried for exactly 4 minutes, then told another kid his drawing looked like a dead octopus. So, yeah, she's yours." Another. "I got thrown out at 9 p.m. because Vivian said private nurses only. I came back at midnight. Rosa let me in." A pause. "I know you can't hear me, but if there's any part of you in there still fighting, don't stop. They're trying to make the world forget who I was to you." Another. "I almost signed the custody revision today. Silence. When Noah spoke again, his voice was wrecked. They said if I fought, they'd drag your name through court again. Said Mia needed stability, not scandal. I hate them for making me choose between being her father and becoming the reason she's hurt. I didn't sign. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. But I didn't. Elena couldn't breathe. She lowered the recorder and cried without sound. Rosa quietly left the room. When Noah came in later, Elena was staring at the box like it might open wider and swallow her. "You stayed," she whispered. Noah leaned against the wall, tired enough to tell the truth plainly. "Yeah." "Every day?" "Most." "Why most?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Some days they won." She looked up. He gave a crooked, ashamed smile. "You want the saint version? I can't give it. There were days I got drunk. Days I broke things in my apartment because I couldn't break what I actually wanted to. Days Mia cried when she had to come with me and cried when she had to leave me, and I couldn't tell which was worse. Days your family made me feel so small I started believing them." His jaw tightened. "But I never stopped coming back." That honesty did something to Elena. Perfect people are easy to doubt. Broken ones are harder. "What were we fighting about that night?" she asked. Noah looked at her for a long time. Then he sat down. "Your sister." A chill went through her instantly. "What about her?" "You'd found something." He rubbed both hands together like the memory still carried cold. "Money, accounts, papers from the foundation your dad put in your name. You thought Vivian had been moving funds." Elena shut her eyes. A flash. Her office, spreadsheet columns, her own signature copied badly. "She had debts," Noah continued. "A lot of them. I told you to go to the police." "You didn't believe me," Elena said suddenly. He looked stunned, then guilty. "No," he admitted. "Not at first. I thought you were spiraling because your dad was sick and Vivian had always been a snake but never that. We fought. I said you were letting old jealousy turn into paranoia." Elena's eyes filled. "That's why I left." "Yeah." She swallowed. "And you told me not to ask you to fix it." His face changed. Pain, immediate and old. "Yeah." For a second, neither of them moved. Then Elena whispered, "I wasn't driving away from you." Noah frowned. "I was driving to your garage," she said. "I remember now. Not all of it, but I was coming back. I found something and I wanted to show you. I wanted to tell you I was right." His breathing changed. "What did you find?" She pressed her fingers to her temple. Rain. Wipers thrashing. Her phone ringing. Vivian's name glowing on the screen. "I don't know yet," she whispered. But she knew. From that moment on, the race changed. Now it wasn't just about Elena recovering. It was about whether she could remember enough before Vivian made sure no one believed her. 2 days later, Vivian filed for emergency medical authority, claiming Elena's cognitive state made her vulnerable to external emotional coercion. The hearing was set fast. Money does that. So does fear. Noah stood outside the family court annex in a suit he hadn't worn since Elena's father's funeral. Vivian arrived in cream silk with a legal team and the expression of a woman attending a charity luncheon. Reporters gathered. Microphones rose. One asked Vivian if it was true Elena had spoken Noah's name first when she woke up. Vivian smiled sadly, like someone dignified enough not to compete with delusion. Trauma can make people reach for familiar patterns, she said. What matters is long-term safety. Noah clenched his fists so hard his nails cut skin. Inside, it got worse. Vivian's attorney laid out 7 years of carefully arranged character assassination. Noah's angry outburst in a hospital corridor after being denied a visit. His missed child support payment after losing work during the legal battle. The neighbor complaint about yelling from years ago. The bar fight he never started but definitely finished. Each fact held just enough truth to stink. Then came the part that made Elena shake with rage. Mr. Reed has built a mythology around his devotion, Vivian's attorney said smoothly. But the medical and family records show Ms. Hart's immediate support system for 7 years has been her mother and sister. Mr. Reed remained peripheral by necessity. Peripheral. Like a husband at the edge of his own marriage. Like a father at the edge of his own child's life. Noah didn't interrupt, didn't explode. He stood there and let strangers sand down his life into a few ugly lines. Then Mia was brought in briefly, not to testify, just to establish continuity of care. She sat beside Vivian with her feet not touching the floor and a ribbon slipping from one braid. She looked terrified. Elena tried to rise from her wheelchair. The doctor pressed her shoulder gently. Not yet. Vivian's lawyer asked Mia who helped her with homework, who packed her lunches, who took her to dance. Aunt Vivian, Mia said each time, voice barely audible. Then came the knife. And when you feel scared, who do you go to? Mia hesitated. Her eyes found Noah for the shortest second. Then she whispered, Aunt Vivian. Noah looked down. Elena made a sound like someone had reached into her chest and twisted. The hearing ended with temporary authority still in Vivian's hands until Elena underwent further evaluation. A bureaucratic delay. A legal pause. But everyone in that room knew what it really was. Time for Vivian to tighten her grip. Outside, reporters swarmed again. Flashbulbs snapped. Vivian placed a protective hand on Mia's shoulder and gave the cameras her saintly profile. Noah tried to walk past them. Someone shoved a microphone in his face. Did Elena crash trying to get away from you? He stopped. The whole staircase went silent. Even the reporters felt they had stepped onto something dangerous. Noah turned slowly. His eyes were bloodshot, jaw trembling with the kind of control that hurts worse than rage. No, he said. She crashed trying to come back. That clip went viral in 3 hours. Elena saw it from her hospital bed and cried so hard the nurses had to increase her monitors. That night, Mia came back alone, not because Vivian allowed it, because Elena's mother, Mary Ann, finally did one decent thing. She brought the child after Vivian left for a television interview. Mia climbed onto the chair beside Elena's bed and said, "Did Dad mean that?" Elena wiped her eyes. "Mean what?" "That you were coming back." Elena took a long breath. "Yes." Mia looked down at her hands. "Aunt Vivian says he says things to make people feel bad for him. Children shouldn't have to sort adults into liars and saints. It leaves a scar either way." Elena reached for the box of voice recorders. "Then let me show you something." Together, mother and daughter listened. Noah on Mia's 4th birthday. Noah teaching sleepy Elena how Mia had learned to whistle through a missing front tooth. Noah after a school recital he wasn't invited to. I parked across the street and listened from outside because the side doors were open. She forgot one step, then found it again. just like you. Mia started crying quietly around the 7th recording. By the 10th, she was in Elena's arms. "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered. "Because he was trying not to make you choose," Elena said. Mia looked up. "Did Aunt Vivian lie?" Elena closed her eyes for a moment. This was the impossible part, telling the truth without handing a child poison. "She wanted control," Elena said softly. "Sometimes people lie when they're afraid of losing it." Mia's little face crumpled. "I told Dad I didn't want to live with him." Elena kissed her hair. "Then you tell him something different when you're ready." Just when it felt like they might finally be turning toward each other, the next blow came. Rosa brought Elena an old hospital belongings envelope that had somehow been misplaced through 7 years of transfers and audits. Inside was a damaged silver key taped to a note written in Elena's own handwriting. "If anything happens to me, locker 317, don't trust V." Elena stared at it. Noah stared at it. Neither of them spoke for a full 5 seconds. Then he said, "Do you remember writing that?" "No." "Do you remember what 317 is?" She shook her head. Then the memory hit. Train station, downtown lockers, a place she used when she didn't want family drivers following her. Her pulse shot up. Noah was already on his feet. "Stay here." Elena grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. "If I'm right," she whispered, "everything changes." He looked at her hand holding him, then at her face. Then he nodded once and left. The train station locker hadn't been opened in 7 years. Dust clung to the metal seam. When Noah turned the key, it stuck so badly he thought it might snap. Then it gave with a sound like a bone cracking. Inside was a waterproof document pouch. Nothing more. Noah took it straight to Rose's apartment because by then he trusted almost no building connected to the Harts. Inside were printed bank records, copied signatures, foundation transfer logs, and one old flash drive sealed in plastic. There was also a voice memo labeled with Elena's handwriting. "Open if I don't make it home." Noah sat at Rose's kitchen table and played it. Static. A car engine. Rain. Then Elena's voice from 7 years earlier, breathless and furious. "Noah, if you hear this, I'm sorry. You were right about one thing. I should have brought this to you sooner. Vivian's been stealing from the Hart Children's Fund for at least 2 years. She forged my signature on the shell transfers. I copied everything. I confronted her tonight, and she panicked." A horn blared somewhere in the recording. Elena kept talking, voice shaking. "She said I'd ruin the family name. She said Dad would die thinking I destroyed us. If anything happens to me, it was not an accident." Noah went cold. Then came the sound that changed everything. Elena inhaled sharply. "Oh my God." Metal, screeching, her voice turning to terror. "The brakes!" The recording cut off. Noah didn't realize he had stood up until the chair tipped behind him. Rosa covered her mouth. For 7 years he had lived with guilt. For 7 years he had replayed their last argument and convinced himself his words had sent her to the river. Now, in one grainy minute, that guilt transformed into something else. Rage with direction. By morning, Elena had another memory waiting. Not a full one, just enough. Vivian in the garage 2 days before the crash, wearing gloves, saying she was looking for windshield fluid, smiling too long. Noah drove 3 hours that day to a storage unit on the edge of the industrial district. He hadn't told anyone about it, not even Rosa. Inside, under tarps and dust, sat the remains of Elena's car. He had bought it at auction before the insurance company could destroy it. Not because he had a plan, because some part of him couldn't bear losing the last place her hands had touched. He brought in an independent forensic mechanic, an old woman named Denise who had testified in criminal cases for 30 years and hated rich people on instinct. She crawled beneath the frame, swore twice, and rolled back out. "This brake line didn't rupture in the crash," she said. "It was cut before impact." Noah just stood there. Denise wiped grease from her hands. "Clean incision, deliberate. Sloppy enough to fail under pressure, neat enough to look accidental after." For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he asked, "Can you put that in writing?" "Oh, sweetheart," Denise said. "I'll put it on a billboard." Vivian moved fast once she sensed the ground shifting. Elena was scheduled to be transferred to a rehabilitation center out of state. The paperwork was rushed. The doctor assigned was one of Vivian's donors. Press statements were drafted, calling it a private healing transition. It would have worked, too, if Elena had still been weak, if Mia had still been confused, if Marianne had remained asleep inside her own cowardice. But guilt is a slow acid. Eventually, it burns through. Marianne came to Elena's room that afternoon with red eyes and a stack of photo albums. "I told myself Vivian was protecting us," she said without preamble. "After your father died, I couldn't survive losing both my daughters, so I chose the one who could still answer me." Elena listened in silence. Marianne sat down carefully. "I let her push Noah out because it was easier than admitting she might be capable of something monstrous." The honesty came late. Too late to erase anything, but not too late to matter. "Will you help me stop her?" Elena asked. Marianne nodded once. Then she started to cry, the way older women cry when they finally understand the price of their own denial. Not pretty, not graceful, real. The final confrontation came at a gala. Of course it did. Vivian had spent 7 years building a public shrine to her own devotion, so naturally she chose a ballroom full of donors, cameras, judges, and board members to announce Elena's next chapter and secure support before the court could reopen the case. Crystal lights, white orchids, a giant screen showing photos of sleeping Elena with text about family resilience and hope. Hope. Noah nearly tore the banner down when he saw it. Vivian stepped onto the stage in silver and applause rose around her. She spoke about sacrifice, about love, about protecting vulnerable people from chaos. Then she smiled toward the side entrance where Elena was being wheeled in. The room stood. Cameras flashed. People cried. Vivian opened her arms. And that was the moment everything slipped. Because Elena did not roll toward her sister. She stood, slowly, unsteadily, but on her own feet. A hush fell over the ballroom. Noah moved beside her instantly, one hand hovering near her back, but not touching unless she asked. Mia stood on her other side in a blue dress, clutching one of Noah's fingers so tight her knuckles were pale. Vivian's smile cracked. "Elena," she said too quickly. "You shouldn't be straining yourself." Elena took the microphone. For a second, the room was so quiet the speakers hummed. Then she said, "The first person I reached for when I woke up was my husband." You could feel the air change. Vivian tried to laugh lightly. "Sweetheart, maybe we should do this privately." "No," Elena said. One word, sharp enough to stop her. For the first time in years, Vivian looked like what she was instead of what she played. Elena lifted her chin. "For 7 years, I was told a story about my own life while I couldn't answer back. I was told who loved me, Who hurt me? Who stayed? Who left? Her voice trembled once, but only once. That story was a lie. Whispers spread through the room. Noah didn't take his eyes off Vivian. Elena continued. My husband was called unstable, dangerous, unfit. But while people polished speeches about family devotion, he sat in hospital chairs and talked to a woman who might never wake up. He was shoved into hallways, cut out of photos, and kept from his daughter. Still, he came back. Mia looked up at Noah with tears in her eyes. Vivian stepped forward. This is emotional confusion. Elena's recovery is fragile. Don't, Elena said quietly. Then she nodded toward the back. Denise walked in. So did Rosa. So did an investigator carrying copies of the bank records and the forensic report. On the giant screen behind Vivian, the fundraiser slideshow vanished. In its place appeared transfer records, shell accounts, forged signatures. Then the audio played. Elena's own voice from 7 years ago filled the ballroom. If anything happens to me, it was not an accident. The brakes. Gasps, chairs scraping. One donor actually said, "My God," out loud. Vivian turned so pale the makeup on her face seemed to float above the skin. This is fabricated, she snapped. Noah's been obsessed for years. The brake line was cut, Denise said, into a second microphone someone handed her. Before impact. Deliberately, Vivian's control finally shattered. She pointed at Noah. You kept that car hidden for 7 years. You expect anyone to believe this isn't your little revenge fantasy? Noah answered before Elena could. No, he said. I expect them to believe the truth, because you've had 7 years to bury it and still couldn't kill all of it. Something ugly flashed across Vivian's face then. Not fear. Hatred. Pure and unmasked. I did everything for this family, she hissed. You were a stain on it the day she brought you home from that garage. There it was. No polished voice, no saintly sorrow. Just the venom. Marianne covered her mouth. Mia stepped behind Noah, frightened. Elena stared at her sister like she was seeing a corpse stand up. Vivian looked around the room, realized too late that everyone was seeing her now, really seeing her, and made one final, desperate choice. She lunged toward Mia. Maybe to grab her, maybe to drag her out, maybe just to create chaos big enough to hide in. She never got close. Noah moved first, then security. Then police who had been waiting just outside after the investigator received the evidence an hour earlier. The ballroom exploded into shouts, camera flashes, people stumbling backward in gowns and tuxedos, while Vivian screamed that Elena was weak, Noah was a parasite, the family name was being murdered. Elena watched her sister dragged away in silver under white lights. No applause came. Some endings are too ugly for applause. Only silence. And in that silence, Mia let go of Noah's finger, stepped in front of him, and asked the question she had carried like a stone for years. You came every day? Noah looked at her. His whole face changed. Every day they let me, he said. Then, after a beat, and some days they didn't. Mia burst into tears and threw herself at him so hard he stumbled. He caught her with both arms and held on like a drowning man finding wood in black water. I'm sorry, she sobbed into his jacket. I'm sorry I said I didn't want to live with you. Noah pressed his cheek to her hair, eyes closing. You never have to be sorry for what grown-ups broke around you. Elena started crying again. So did Marianne. So did half the women near the back of the ballroom. A month later, the court orders were overturned. The investigation widened. Foundations were audited. Trustees resigned. Old employees started talking once they realized Vivian no longer had the power to protect or punish anyone. Some called it justice. Justice is too neat a word. Justice doesn't give Elena back the birthdays she missed. It doesn't erase the first time Mia learned to read, or the gap in Noah's front tooth from the bar fight he got into the year he almost gave up, or the nights Marianne slept beside a lie because truth was too expensive. It doesn't return 7 years. But love, stubborn, ugly love, did something justice couldn't. It survived them. Recovery wasn't cinematic after that. It was hard. Messy. Elena had to relearn muscle memory, balance, crowds, stairs. She had panic attacks in parking garages. She woke from dreams of brakes failing and couldn't speak for minutes at a time. Noah slept on the couch for weeks after she came home because he didn't trust himself to lie beside her and pretend 7 years were just a bad month. Mia had nightmares about waking up and losing both parents again. They fought sometimes. Of course they did. About therapy appointments, about school pickups, about whether Noah hovered too much, about whether Elena pushed herself too hard trying to be the mother of an 8-year-old when the last thing her heart remembered clearly was singing to a baby in the dark. One evening, Mia slammed her bedroom door and screamed, "I don't know what normal is supposed to be." Nobody had an answer for that. So Noah sat on the floor outside her room. Elena sat beside him, and they waited. 10 minutes later, the door opened. That was their new miracle. Not waking up once. Choosing each other over and over after that. On the first anniversary of Elena's return home, Noah took her to Mercer Bridge. She stared at the rails for a long time, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No," she said. Then she smiled a little. "But I'm here anyway." They stood in the cold, with the river moving black beneath them. "This place took everything," Noah said. Elena looked at him. "No," she said softly. "Not everything." She reached for his hand. 7 years had changed it. More scars, rougher skin, different lines. But she would have known it in the dark. He looked down at their fingers woven together and gave a shaky exhale. "I still hear that night sometimes," he admitted. "The last thing I said to you." Elena stepped closer. "Then hear this instead." He lifted his eyes. "I came back," she whispered. The wind moved around them. Cars passed. Somewhere far behind them, the city kept living like cities do, indifferent to private resurrections. Noah touched his forehead to hers. For a moment, neither of them needed words. Back home, Mia had taped one of Noah's old recorder labels to the fridge. Not because it meant anything to anyone else, just because she liked seeing proof that some things had waited. That some voices keep talking even when the world says no one is listening. And maybe that was the real story all along. Not that a woman woke up after 7 years in a coma, but that when she opened her eyes to a world rearranged by lies, she still knew the one hand that had never let go.